Okay, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you. In the name of His Son, Jesus, I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to preach the word of God and never go. I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to deal with today's topic, and it is a question that young sister, asked about marriage, and I'm going to read the comment or question and answer it. She says, advice to young married couples, question mark. I'm 23 and my husband is 27. I'm nervous and I know that marriage is a huge responsibility. I want to please, give me 1 second. I want to please Yah and Yahusha, and sometimes I feel unworthy. How do I reconcile these feelings? Okay, so that's a good question. And that's a good mindset to have, to want to please the Creator. Okay. To show reverence to the Father. That is a good way to be. That's how a servant should be. Um, so it seems like you had the right or correct mindset. Okay, you're not more unworthy than anybody else in the sense that we've all made, for the most part, we've all made mistakes. Okay, but the question is, how do we move forward? Okay, so you are married and you're young, so I'm going to address the question and how you reconcile these feelings. The way you reconcile a feeling is of inadequacy is to do what you're supposed to be doing. And that is the best advice that I can give anybody, man or woman that is married, is to understand what you're supposed to be doing. See, as a husband, you have a role, and as a wife, you have a role. Peace to everybody that's listening, Brother Isaiah, uh, Laws, and Brother Noel. Peace to you. Um, that's the main thing, knowing your role. And oftentimes, men and women don't know their role. And when you don't know your role, you don't know how to play your position, there's going to be problems within the relationship. There may be problems in a relationship if you play your role and the other person is not. But the thing about that is that you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I know that I've done what I'm supposed to do, not based upon my own opinion, but rather based upon what the Bible says. Because the word of the Most High is our standard. Okay? And it is overall a guide to live and particularly the instruction of Torah that He gave. But when it comes to what you're supposed to be doing, I'm gonna focus on you because you're a woman and you asked the question. So, I want to focus on your role and what that is. Let's go to Genesis, the 2nd chapter. In the Bereshith, we find the creation of man, and we find the institution of marriage. And it is within this institution that man and woman would come together as one to produce fruit, to produce, as Malachi said, a godly seed, okay, to produce progeny, so that man would continue. And in this institution, which is the most important institution amongst mankind, again, it is best suited to bring forth children because it is balanced. It is the child has the support, the guidance that he or she would need within that institution. Again, when people are playing their roles. So now let's look at what the role is. Peace to you, sister. This is Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and I'm going to pick it up at verse 18. It says, and the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make an help meet for him. Now, first and foremost, before there was a woman, there was a man. The man came forth out of the woman. Excuse me, the woman came forth out of the man, excuse me. But we should also understand that before there was a woman, man had purpose. Okay? He put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it before he had a woman. And that's what I would encourage men to find their purpose and be about their purpose. and be driven by purpose. As men, we can be driven by a lot of things, but we should be about the Lord's work, and we should be about our purpose. Okay? And a woman is there to help you fulfill that purpose. She is not there to be your boss. She is not there to be your head. That is not her role. But so often today, if you don't know you're supposed to have purpose, what is she going to help you with? So it says in verse 18 again, and the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make it help meet for him. And woman, that is your role. It is to be a help meet or fitting for the man. Again, not his head. So you should understand, if you are choosing to be married to someone, you should understand that that person needs to understand their role, and you need to understand that you are under that person, not as his head. So that puts you in a vulnerable position. So what you want to do is put yourself under somebody who, quite frankly, is a servant of the Most High, because you know that type of person who knows his role, who is a man of Yah, is a man of the Most High. He's going to do what he's supposed to do to the best of his ability. Okay, so this is the woman's role. The woman's role is to be in subjection. Let's keep reading. It says in verse 21, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman and brought her unto the man. So he took this woman out from, she came forth of the rib. I believe it to be the regenerative rib of Adam. And he took this rib and fashioned the woman as a helpmeet. So there's a oneness there, and brought her unto the man. That is your helpmeet. When you're looking at a woman, you're looking at the counterpart of man. As in one R&B song, she said, if I'm a reflection of him, I must be fly, right? That's what a woman is. There's balance there. Okay? So it says, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Okay? And understand that the woman, when you look at what a woman is, the woman is the incubator. The woman incubates. So the seed is put forth, comes forth of the man, and is incubated in the woman. And then she births an image of the man. Okay? That's what women do in general. Okay? It goes even beyond just the incubation of the seed, a man's seed. It goes even beyond that. Again, because if you have a vision, if you have purpose, if you're on that, she's helping you with that. But nevertheless, it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother. Peace to you, brother Tavion. It's good to see you there, brother. And shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So they're one flesh when they come together as one in sex, but also, or intimacy, they're also one on one accord. Okay, with roles. And understand something. They said, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife. The most important person in your life should be your spouse. You're leaving father and mother to start a family and to do what they did in having you. But ultimately, we should also understand that you're leaving father and mother. See, again, now there's a oneness there, and what you do not want to do is let anybody in between that. One thing that young people often do, young couples, peace to you, brother Joseph. It's good to see you there, brother. Hope you're doing well. One thing you see couples do is that when they have some kind of friction, when they have some kind of contention, which will happen. Anytime you have a human being, you have conflict. If you have one human being, you have conflict. You have internal conflict. So definitely when you have two, you have a male and a female who think, all of us think differently. Certainly men and women think differently in general. There's going to be some friction. There's going to be some contention. And the big mistake that oftentimes people make is letting somebody in that shouldn't be there. Letting somebody in that shouldn't be there will break up a marriage. I'm gonna say that again. Letting somebody in between you and your spouse will break up a marriage. I'm gonna say it like this. It ain't nobody else's business. It ain't mama's business. It ain't daddy's business. It ain't nobody else's business. Now, I'm not talking about any cases of extreme abuse and neglect. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the normal contention that can take place. You can be so angry, and now you let somebody else into your situation, whether it be a parent, a relative, or forbid it be one of your friends, somebody who doesn't, especially somebody who doesn't know what it means to be married. Now they're in your situation, influencing you. It like I said, it ain't nobody else's business. So don't down your spouse, don't degrade your spouse in general, and definitely don't do that in front of other people because you're angry. All right. So therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Now, let's go to 1 Corinthians, because the sister had a question about marriage. 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, and we want to pick it up at verse 8. Because the woman, it says she was made for a helpmeet, and it's a sister that asked the question. We all need to know our role. So in marriage, what you want to be in a position where you know you're doing what you're supposed to do. So a woman is made as a helpmeet, regardless of what any feminist will tell you. A woman is a helpmeet for a man. 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, and verse 8. It says, for the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. We read how she came forth out of the man. First one to give birth, so to speak, was the man. It says, neither was the man created for the woman. It says something, but the woman for the man. You were created for the man. So if you understand that role, you understand how you should operate within marriage. I'm going to read this again. Because even amongst believers, when you hear certain things that you don't necessarily like or agree with, then you come up with excuses. So I'm going to read this again. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman. See, it wasn't that when you think of happy wife, happy life, that is nonsense. You're supposed to take care of your wife. However, you are not there in the sense to for the purpose of her. And what I mean by that is you should already have purpose as a man. And it says, neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. So again, you must understand your role. If you understand your role, things become easier. Peace to you, MC Israel and Miss J Flagler. Peace to you. That's what you want to do. Again, neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. 1 Timothy, the 2nd chapter. That's something, especially in the Western world, that it's a hard pill to swallow. But the reality is here. 1 Timothy 2 and verse 13, it says, for Adam was first formed, then Eve. But how things operate today, it seems as almost if Eve came first, particularly with our people. I see it all the time. Even amongst believers, I see it all the time. People not understanding their roles, and now you have chaos because you can't understand your role. And I'm going to say this, a woman is not going to respect you if you don't operate in your manhood. Some would say, why should she? She should, because that's her role. Because again, we have to play our role. And she's in error in not doing that. But nevertheless, men must be men and take accountability and responsibility. Okay? Do what they're supposed to be doing so a woman can be comfortable in submission. But your duty is to submit. And a man's duty is to love his woman. But now let's go to Ephesians. Because again, a sister asked the question, what advice? How do I reconcile these feelings of unworthiness? Again, do what you're supposed to do. If you can look in the mirror and say, I've been a good wife, and I'm gonna say this, not according to man's standards, not according to westernized European standards, but according to the standard of the book. See, if you could, peace to you, Eminem, if you could look at it and say, I know I've been a good wife based on this, then you shouldn't have any unworthy feelings. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, and verse 22. Because he tells you clearly, the Bible tells us clearly what the wife is to do. Ephesians 5:22, it says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Understand what that means? It means just as one is serving the Lord and submitting to him, you're supposed to submit to your husband like that. Now again, put something in your mind. That's a vulnerable position to be in. So it is the woman is in such a vulnerable position. Oftentimes, a woman will test a man. That's something women do in general to test to see if you are worthy of submission. I'm not saying that's right, but that's what they do. That's what they do. And what a man has, a true man, what he has is the burden of responsibility. The burden of being the provider and protector, that is a burden. But it can be a burden to submit to a man. So I'm not saying they both don't have something, so don't get me misunderstood. But I'm focusing on the woman because this is a woman's role in particular, because this is a sister's question. So she said, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Hold our fingers here. Let's go to Colossians. Because again, the best advice I would give somebody who's married is know what you're supposed to be doing. It's like if you're playing a sport, you're playing a position or a role on a team. If you know your role on that team, the team can prosper. And your role doesn't necessarily have to be top scorer or leading scorer. I'll give you an example. It's keeping with the basketball analogy. One of my favorite teams, the Bulls, not today, the Bulls of old, particularly when the Bulls had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. Okay? So now Michael Jordan, the leading scorer, he's getting the most shine, if you will. Most skill, but then you had Scottie Pippen, the best support player of all time. Okay? Revolutionized that position he played. And was known as one of the 50 greatest players, and was not of all time in the NBA history, but was not the best player on his team. But then you had somebody else playing a role. You had Dennis Rodman playing a role, who is controlling the game through not scoring, but defense and rebounds. Indispensable. They went and got him because he was you needed that person to play that position. So now you have him also. He also is in the Hall of Fame. Why? Because of the position he played, not averaging many points a game, but controlling the game. So he knew his position, he knew his role. So when you know your role and your position, the team can be prosperous. You understand? So Colossians, the 3rd chapter, let's pick it up in verse 18. Colossians 3:18, again, it says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fit in the Lord. So again, we're reading that a wife is supposed to submit unto her husband. Now let's go back to, let's go to 1 Peter. 1 Peter. And that's something that is not understood. 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter and verse 1. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. Peace to you, Brother Leo. It's good to see you there, brother. All the brethren in here. Good to see you. It says, if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. So even if you're living in a situation where the man is not a believer, he may be won over, may be converted by looking at your conversation or your manner of living. See, your man, I'm going to say this and I want you to hear me. Your spouse's shortcomings, your man's shortcomings are not an excuse for you not to do what you're supposed to do. I'm going to say that again. Your man's shortcomings, your wife's shortcomings are not an excuse for you to not do what you're supposed to do. They are not an excuse. These shortcomings are not an excuse for you not to fulfill your role, for you not to play your position. You have to play your position. Peace to you, brothers. Good to see you there. So it says, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear, your manner of living. So it says, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of a gold or of putting on of apparel. So you have to have some humility. The sister seems to be exhibiting some humility when she says, sometimes I feel unworthy because I want to please Yah. That is humility. So in pleasing the Lord, you'll play your position. Same thing with a man. And he wants to please the Lord. You can't not take care of your wife and children. You can't neglect your duty as the spiritual head of your household and please the Lord. It doesn't work like that. You please him by doing what he told you to do, by fulfilling your role. So it says, but let it be the hidden man. So it shouldn't. So if this is what you see today, I'm gonna read this again. He says, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold or of putting on of apparel. Oftentimes, all praise to the Most High, good brother. Oftentimes, what you will see is women, even married women, who crave, and I mean crave, attention from the world. They crave attention from the world. They dress to attract attention, even inappropriately to attract attention. But that's not what your focus should be. The focus should be your character. You understand? And that's something that you see today in this society where you have, it's the age of the selfie, it's the age of self-aggrandizement, it's the age of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And I want to be seen. I want to take a picture every 5 minutes. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. But what about your character? Is there virtue there? Is there meekness there? Is there godliness there? Is there purity there? Is there integrity there? Is there some loyalty? Where is it? Because that short time where you thinking you looking good and you looking attractive, it will fade. And then what are you left with? What you used to be? What you used to be, beauty is vain. That's not your focus. And men, we as a whole, collectively, men, particularly believers, but men in general, we need to stop upholding women that are not worth upholding. A woman shouldn't be dressing inappropriately, acting inappropriately, hypersexualized. People need to stop hypersexualizing women, but women need to stop hypersexualizing themselves. And they should not be quote unquote winning. You shouldn't be winning and a whore. I'm just gonna say it how it is. I know that's harsh. You should not be winning. The one that should be winning is the woman who has integrity, the woman who has some virtue, the woman who is marriage material. That's who should be winning. And if men had that approach, instead of every falling into the terrible trap of just looking at a woman who's not about anything, but because she looks physically attractive, you chasing her and would even marry her, you lose everything you have. I'm reading a book right now. It's Steinbeck. He wrote A Mice and Men. He also wrote East of Eden. I'm reading East of Eden now. And in East of Eden, a man, he marries a woman who is described as having just low quality. So she's devious, low quality, and she's a prostitute. And he married her, and his brother tells him, don't marry her. And then what happens? The brother, he sleep, and she jump in the bed with the other brother. See, we shouldn't be rewarding that type of behavior. I know I'm getting off a little bit, but when we're choosing marriage, the Bible tells you who can find a virtuous woman. Her price is far above rubies. That's what you want. So, let's see here. So it says, for after this manner let me go back to verse 4. But let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. Okay, that's what you want. A woman who has a meek and quiet spirit, who has humility, who has a mindset to serve the Lord. And that's the kind of woman you want to be. And that's the kind of man you want to be, one that's going to serve the Lord. Right? But it says, for after this manner in the old time, the holy women also who trusted in God adorned themselves. What did they adorn themselves with? That kind of mindset. It says, adorn themselves being in subjection unto their own husbands. When you look at the women of old, when you look at Sarah, even when you look at Rachel and Leah, they had contention, but you understand, and Hannah, but you understand that these women, their mindset was, I want to help this man build his household. They didn't come in there talking about, this is my house, shut up, I'll run this. Happy wife, happy life. No, they wanted to build that household. Okay? Even when you look at Zipporah and what she did, when the Lord was going to kill Moses for not circumcising his son. When you look at Abigail and even what she did and her husband was a fool. That's what his name was, Nabal. Nabal's actions almost got everybody killed, but Abigail, she didn't go and cuss him out. What she did was she did what she can do, operating in her role, but not usurping his authority, and saved her household. And saved it because David was coming to slay. And eventually Nabal died, and Abigail became one of David's wives. But then it says, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. Well, it says, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. So, a lot of women calling their husband something, they ain't Lord, though. Then it said, whose daughters ye are. So you're a daughter of Sarah, not just because you call yourself, but if you operating like Sarah operated. Then you can have that title, if you will. So it says, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well and are not afraid with any amazement. Okay? Now, it says, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife. So for a woman that isn't, here we go. So now somebody asks, what if your husband is not in the truth? Must you still submit? I just read. Likewise, let's go back to verse 1. See, that's what I said earlier. I don't know when you came in. But earlier, like I said, when you hear something that you don't want to hear, and I'm not saying you did, so don't misunderstand, but this is a hard pill to swallow for a woman. I'm not saying this is easy for a woman to swallow, this pill and what your role is. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that's your role according to the Bible. Then let's go back to verse 1. It says, likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word. So if your husband doesn't obey the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. So if he doesn't obey and he sees what you're doing and your submission unto him, he might be converted. So you said, understood, I know my role. You asked the question. So I'm answering the question. Let's go to Ephesians. So if you know your role, wives, again, Ephesians 5, and back to Ephesians 5. It says, wives, submit, in verse 22, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Then it says something. It tells you your role. It says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. So the relationship, if you really want to gain insight into the relationship between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, you should look at the relationship, the dynamics between the Lord and the church. Christ, our Mashiach, our Messiah, is in the role of an husband. The church, Israel, is in the role of a wife. Now, think about it. What is the role of the Messiah? The Messiah, Christ, and we know that was even him in the wilderness. That's who they communed with. That's who Moses was communing with. It was none other than Christ before he was manifested in the flesh. So, thank you. I'm not sure what that said, Tavion, but appreciate you, brother, for at least looking. So now, okay, G. Daniel Williamson, hold your question for me, and I'm gonna come back to that once I get finished with this. Okay, if you would, and everybody else hold their question, please, until I get done with this point. So again, if you want to understand the dynamics between a man and a wife, look at the relationship between our Lord Mashiach and Israel, his wife, or the church. Okay, think about their roles. What did the Lord do? He provided for this woman. He provided for this woman. Okay, that's what he did. He gave provisions and protector for this woman. The woman's role was to do what? The woman's role was to submit unto God. You understand? A wife's role is to submit unto her husband. A husband's role is to provide and protect his woman. Why? Because he loves his woman. That's what he's supposed to do. Love ain't just saying you love the woman. It's action. And you'll know if he loves you by what he does. Why okay, again, everybody just if y'all would please just let me get through this, and then I can answer questions. And again, brother Tavion, I appreciate you, brother. So it says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the body, head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ. See, we don't question whether or not Israel was supposed to be in subjection to the Lord. When we read about them being disobedient, we look at it like, man, you think trifling might come to mind. Ignorant, hard-hearted, stiff-necked, oppositionally defiant. But oftentimes we don't realize that the same thing can be said for the woman. Because you're not playing your role. You're just like Israel in this case. But also, we need to think about the man. Because the man, if he's not protecting and providing like the Lord, and you see what the Lord did for us, he gave himself for, sacrificed his life. So if the man don't have that kind of mindset at all, he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. See, one thing about it, when you look at the Lord in Israel, the church, they should have followed the Lord. They should have submitted unto him. Why? Because look at what he did for them. He said, I'm the one that brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. I'm the one that you read in the description of Ezekiel about this one whom he found covered in blood. And then how he swallowed, how he washed, how he nurtured. And this one turns into this beautiful woman. And then this woman goes out and commits adultery. In other words, worshiping false gods. But so it says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Again, know your role. That he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. That he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself, because she is you. We go back into the beginning. The woman came forth out of the man. She is your reflection. So she is you. So you wouldn't degrade yourself if you have common sense. You wouldn't abuse yourself if you have any kind of sense. So why would you degrade your woman? Why would you mistreat your woman? Again, if y'all can hold y'all questions and comments until I get done, I'm almost finished. Then I'm going to answer questions. It says, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. All right. It says, for no man ever hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. So just what he did for the church, he provided, he protected. So must we as men do. It said, for we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. He took you all the way to the beginning. But then he said, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Okay? So again, look at that dynamic and you will see what you're supposed to be doing. If you're a husband or if you're a wife. He said, nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife even as himself. And the wife see that she reverence her husband. And if you have a righteous man, and if you're doing that, that man, he might not be, you do what you're supposed to do. If you have a righteous man, you do what you're supposed to do, and you'll ask him, I can't, if he can do it, he'll get it done. He'll be trying to move a mountain for you. He'll try to get it done. He might grunt when you say do it. Not want to do it, but he gonna try to do it. That's qualified as if you had a righteous man. And if what you asking is feasible. Titus, the second chapter. We're going to pick it up at verse 3. Because where should you learn what you're supposed to be doing as a wife from? What can you learn from? This is Titus, the second chapter and verse 3. It says, the aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things. So the aged woman, the woman who has some age about it, she should teach. It says that they may teach the young women to be sober. That's sober-minded. To love their husbands, to love their children. So when you can look at their example, they're teaching you to what to do. One thing that I see that's lacking greatly is that there's a large disconnect between the older generation and the younger generation in a lot of areas of life. One being the institution of marriage. My grandparents, they both died, but they were married for 66 years. They had some insight into marriage. Okay. Now think about if you have somebody that's in the word that's been married for some time and the insight that they can provide. Okay. So, aged women who have some insight, they can, but see, unfortunately, there's such a disconnect now. But now let's go to verse 5. It says, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. All right. So now that's just a little bit on your roles. You want to play your role. That's the best advice that I can give to a young sister and to a young brother. Play your position. So now this says, what if the man doesn't want to marry and he's in the truth? Okay, so believing that King David and Moses and Solomon had wives and concubines, should you abide by those roles as well? I don't know. Well, that's kind of okay. So one has nothing to do with the other. Okay, so there are 3 marital statuses that are acceptable. The first, as far as Torah, the Bible in general, the first is being single. A man doesn't have to be married. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. This is Matthew the 19th chapter. Matthew the 19th chapter. And let's pick it up at verse he's talking about divorce, and they put forth this bogus question. And he answers the question, but in answering the question about divorce, he says something. Because the disciples, they said, if you can't, the disciples said to him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. That's what they said in verse 10. But listen to what the Messiah says. He says, but he said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save they so whom it is given. So all men can't be single. Okay? He says, for there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. Meaning something, in the case where they wouldn't have a wife. Okay? It says, so born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. Okay, so for example, you could have some issue where you just not capable. Okay, that was from birth. Or you can have it where you like in the Arab slave trade where they would make eunuchs. So like when you look and read in the book of Daniel, and the master of the eunuchs, he went and he got Mishael and Azariah and Hananiah and Daniel. Okay. So they were making men eunuchs. Okay. Sometimes these men would be in harems, which would be some leader, ruler, chief, king, prince had a harem. Okay. And many women are concubines. And you wouldn't have a man that could function in there. So they would make eunuchs do that. Okay. So he said there were some that were made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. How could you be a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake? You're about the Lord's business so much that you're not going to be married. Like Paul was a self-made eunuch. Let's go back to 1 Corinthians and read it in chapter 7. He says in verse 6, he said, but I speak this by permission and not a commandment. In other words, you're not commanded not to get married. This is by permission. This is an option. He says, for I would that all men were even as I myself. How was he? He didn't have a wife. He said, but every man hath this proper gift. What does he mean, proper gift? Well, we just read in Matthew the 19th chapter. Every man cannot do that. See, so an example, man that cannot do that, you look at the Catholic Church. They're supposed to be celibate. But look at what's going on. They molesting kids. There's cases of them abusing the nuns in various places all over the world. So it's not, see, the three marital statuses are single, monogamous, meaning one wife, and polygynous, meaning a man has more than one wife. These three statuses are neutral. They are all acceptable. Polyandry isn't acceptable. Polyamory isn't acceptable. But these three are acceptable. And what makes it improper is how one functions within, if one is single, how one functions if one is monogamous, and how one functions in polygyny. That's what makes it improper. For example, like I said, the celibate, yeah, you're a celibate, but you're molesting kids. You're a problem. You have men who have one wife. Look at all the abuse. Look at all the terrible treatment of these women in those cases today. Most of those are in monogamous relationships. Then you can have some who deal with plural marriage. But again, they marrying kids, or they're doing things that are abusing wives, or doing things that are inappropriate. But that's the actions of the behavior of the people. That has actually nothing to do with the status. Understand that sin came into the world. We've been dying ever since because of one man and one woman, monogamy. But now everybody's not giving that gift to just be by themselves. He says, I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. He said, it's good for you to abide even as I. Why? Because if you do that, what is your focus going to be? Your focus is you can focus totally on the Lord. If you have a wife, you can be focused on the Lord. You should be. But even in ministry, it's not like you can just minister and not provide for your wife. So it says, I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I, but if they cannot contain, meaning, because again, that's not everybody's gift. If you don't have self-control, you say, I need a woman. See, that's not for everybody, just to be by yourself. That's not for most people. Most people that talk about they celibate, even today, I've been celibate for, yeah, okay. You might be celibate right now, but that's usually not the case in the sense of that's what people desire for their entire life. It said, but if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. You understand? So when you say, what if the man doesn't want to marry and he's in the truth? You don't have to be married. Jesus wasn't married. Paul wasn't married. Okay. So now you could operate in being single. Let me read one other thing to you. Give me 1 second. Let's go. We still in 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter. We want to read in verse 29. He says, but this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none. Meaning you need to focus. You still need to focus on the Lord. Okay. But if you are not married, that's why he talked about widows indeed. Because make sure they're widow indeed. Because what happened is their husband are dying and they talk about, I'm going to devote myself to the Lord. But then an opportunity to get married again, and I didn't want to get married. So are you a widow indeed to be provided for? Understand? Okay. So now that's the first part of that question. It said, believing that King David and Moses and Solomon had wives and concubines, should you abide by those roles as well? Now that part of the question, G. Daniel Williamson, if you're still there, can you expound on that a little bit? What do you mean by the next part of your question? Believing that King David and Moses and Solomon had wives. Are you talking, should you abide by those roles as well? Are you talking about the role of a woman being in subjection? Or what are you saying exactly? Help me out with that. So now I'm reading it again. I think I want to answer your question correctly. What do you mean by believing that King David and Moses and Solomon had wives and concubines? Should you abide by those roles as well? Are you talking about the woman? Help a brother out. If you're talking about the woman, it's type of the guy doesn't want to marry but isn't the truth. I answered that part. You don't have to, a man doesn't have to be married. A woman doesn't have to be married. You don't have to be married. You just need to act in righteousness in whatever you are. If you're single, if you're monogamous, truly monogamous, if you're a polygynist, you need to operate in righteousness. So what is the next part of that question? Believing that King David and Moses and Solomon, that's the question I had. Who, when you say, should you abide by those roles as well? Who is the you? Are you talking about women? That's my question. Are you talking about men? I'm not sure who you're talking about. That's like one word, right? Who was the you? Are you talking about men should abide in those roles, or women, or both? Like, help me out with that. Women. Yeah, you still in a role of submission. You're not. that has nothing to do with. Now, let me say this: if a woman is believing that King David, because you said, what if a man doesn't want to be married and he's in the truth? It's kind of. But anyway, yeah, a woman, it doesn't matter if a man has more than one wife. The wife is supposed to be in subjection to her husband. Those are all separate marriages. Okay? So you think about, let's go back and let's read again. Let's read some here. And just so we can get some understanding. Let's go to, let's see. Let's go. Give me 1 second. It doesn't matter just because he has more than one, a man will have more than one wife. Yeah, you're supposed to be in your subjection to your husband, and he's supposed to provide for the wives. Let me read this. Let's go to 1 Peter 3. And like I said, I know this could be a hard pill to swallow. Like even the idea that a woman or a man can have another wife, that is a hard pill to swallow. I saw a woman run her husband over because he was with somebody else. Now, I'm not saying he was operating in righteousness. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you're not really in a position to tell a man that he can't have another woman. He need to be operating in righteousness, though. But you're not in a position to tell him that he can't as a woman. That's just the reality. First, again, I know that's a hard pill to swallow today. This is me. This person belongs to me. No, actually, you would be his possession. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but it is what it is. 1 Peter the 3rd chapter, because you said the woman, should she be in subjection? 1 Peter the 3rd chapter at verse 5. Remember what was said here. It said, for after this manner in the old time, the holy women also who trusting in God adorn themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands. So the women of old time were in subjection unto their own husbands. Look at the example they gave. Peter gives. He said, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long No, I'm not. I'm a finish. Oh, okay. I see what's being said. What if the man doesn't want to be married and he's in the truth? Are you with the man? I don't. Yeah, help me out with that. But is that what's happening? Are you with a man that don't want to be married? He's in the truth. Is that what's going on? Help me out. Yes. Oh, okay. See, I didn't understand that. That's what I'm saying. I'm asking because I'm trying to understand the question. So you're with a man that doesn't want to marry you, and he's in the truth. But what does the believing that King David and Moses has these other wives? What does that have to do with it? Because let me say this. I'm gonna just Sarah. Let me say this real quick. Abraham had more than one wife. Okay, she was in subjection to her husband Abraham. But now you say, what if the man doesn't want to marry? He's in the truth, and you're with him. Why doesn't he want to marry? I'm trying to understand that. If he's with you, and he doesn't want to marry you, do you know why he doesn't want to marry? Or why doesn't he want to marry? Maybe that could help me answer this question. Yes, we are together. Okay. He doesn't want to be married. He says that it's okay for men to have wives and concubines. Oh, okay. I get it now. Oh, okay. Well, so basically you in the situation. Man, I wasn't understanding that. Okay, because he said he doesn't believe in marriage. Well, a concubine is a type of wife. You know, a concubine is a type of wife. So when you talk about you don't believe in marriage, so what's happening is he just basically want to sleep with you. And he said, well, I don't want to be married. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting he go down to the courthouse and this and that. I'm not saying that. Because that has his issues, that can have his issues as well, but he said he don't believe in marriage. So now, yeah, well, that's you. So basically, you put yourself in a position for him to, and I'm not saying this, I'm asking you, put yourself in maybe I don't even need to know that with everybody else on here. But let me say this, a lot of women put themselves in a position for a man just to sleep with you and that be it. Okay? I'm talking in the truth. I ain't talking about in the world. I'm talking about in the truth. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm trying to figure out why waste your time in a situation to where the man don't want to be married. Do you want to be married? You see what I'm saying? So like, see, you need to go into a situation before you lay down with somebody, before you get connected in any type of way, you need to know what that person's position is. Why would you put yourself in a position to be married? That's not, no. And again, marriage isn't necessarily you going down to the courthouse. I'm gonna say that. That's not necessarily the case. But I kind of see what you're saying now. So basically, because you're saying a concubine, and sometimes you look at these things different, various perspectives, but a concubine, that's a type of wife. Okay, she's not on the level of a wife, but a concubine is with that one man and is a type of wife. So it's not like even the example that you used an example of David and Solomon. It's not as if these women. So okay, even if you look at the situation with Israel, Jacob, his name was changed to Israel. He had four women by which the nation was made. He had two, Leah and Rachel, but then their handmaids were also his wives, but they were just secondary wives. They still they were just in a position kind of like Hagar, but it's not. It was a problem on what when Reuben went and laid with one of them. And you look at Solomon. He had all these wives and concubines, and I'm not, he was dealing with these women who were worshiping falsely. But it's not as if he wasn't providing for these women. These were his women. That's what I'm saying. So like even with David. It's even what Absalom did in that era, dealing with his concubine, because that wasn't to be done. So if you think about it, if a woman is to only be with that one man, what is she? You see what I'm saying? So maybe not believing in marriage is not understanding marriage. And the question is, you need to understand what your position is. See, I'm looking at the question as marriage should be. You understand? So, did anybody else have a question before I get off of here? Yeah, don't put yourself in a position. Women do that a lot. Men shouldn't put women in that position. You see that quite a bit. I can understand that. Don't get me wrong. I can understand. You talk about vulnerable. I can understand a man saying, I'm not going down to that courthouse. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. I'll be with you. I commit to you before God. Even having a ceremony, but I'm not doing it. I understand why men don't do that. What's that? So is that no other questions? Okay. I hope that helped. I was confused about what you were asking initially. Let's see. Okay, thank you. There's a question at the top. Okay. I'm trying to find it. Hold on. Oh, somebody wanted some vows. I would love to use vows to my wife that are biblically correct. Are there vows we can use that are right and correct that I can use for my wedding? There's no vows per se that you could find obviously written in the scripture, but you can. I wrote my father's vows when he got married. But yeah. But it would all be based on roles. So I would just say, go to the scriptures. This is what you can do. You can go to the scriptures and read those scriptures over and over about what you're supposed to be doing as a husband, and write your vows from that purpose. Because really, like I said, I wrote my father about when he got married, but in retrospect, I mean, I think about it. I think you need to you read that for yourself, and you do that. I would go over those scriptures or those New Testament texts in some scriptures, but mainly New Testament text about the role of a husband and what you are. Study the relationship between Christ and his bride, and so you can write from that purview about what you're gonna do. That's what you're saying, and don't go beyond that. Don't put yourself in a position of making some vow that you shouldn't. Just tell the woman, what you're gonna do. But with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith. Meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as www.israelteach.org. Somebody say, should contract be involved to detail roles and responsibilities? It can be. That's up to the people involved. That's really up to you. It certainly can be. That's certainly up to you. Again, we meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. All right. What else? All praise the Most High, good brother. If you've been edified through the ministry and would like to leave a donation, you can do so on our website, www.israelteach.org. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. What else? We have Bible study. Thank you. Thinking in my head. Bible study every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you have questions, that's one thing about it. It's on Zoom. Okay, so it's interactive. So, you can come there and ask your questions. And so like when typing's going on, it's kind of difficult at times. Sometimes if there's a miscommunication, and it could be my fault, a misunderstanding, or a miscommunication. It can be a barrier, but once we're talking to one another, you can still have miscommunication, but it's less likely. And so we have it every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom. The personal meeting ID number, if you would like to partake in that, is 602-961-1318. Okay, that number is 602-961-1318. Okay, and so you could you don't have to come and ask questions. You can ask questions if you haven't. Okay, what's up, brother Willie? Peace, brother. Good to see you there, brother. Yeah, I came on extra early. All praise the Most High. Me hold me now. What else? Giving you a hard time. See, all these brothers talking now. A lot of these brothers are in the Bible studies. Good brothers. Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. Brother Tavion, he on his job. Okay, with that, also, the books that I've written that are available at Amazon.com. Enter Egypt Again with Ships. Okay. Killing Black Innocents, the program to control African American reproduction from slavery's end to the present day self-inflicted genocide. The Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays. Hair like wool, feet like burned brass, the color of Jesus and burning truths concerning the Messiah. For then shall be great tribulation. And also, it's upstairs actually. In Defense of Biblical Polygyny. That's the latest book I wrote, and there's a few more that should be coming soon. With that, I want to say peace to everybody. I pray that you were edified. And for the brothers and sisters that are listening, I see you in the Bible study. Peace.